At 6:17 p.m., your phone lights up on the kitchen counter. A text says a transfer of $4,800 is being processed from your account. Did you authorize it? You did not. Your thumb presses no. The amount stays in your mind. You did not type it, approve it, or expect to see it. 30 seconds later, the phone rings. You do not answer immediately. The screen shows the customer service number printed on the back of your bank card. You pull the card from your wallet and compare the digits. No extra numbers. No strange area code. It is the same number you have called before. You answer. The caller knows your name and the last 4 digits of the account. He says your response flagged the transfer for immediate review. The $4,800 is still moving. If the account is not secured within the next few minutes, he says, the transfer may complete. A one-time code arrives. The message includes the familiar warning. Do not share this code with anyone. You hesitate. The caller says the warning applies to authorizing transfers. This code, he claims, confirms a cancellation. You read it aloud. It feels like closing a lock. Then the banking app signs you out. A new notification appears. A transfer of $1,800 is pending. You ask what happened. The caller says this is the transfer the security team is trying to block. The larger amount appeared while the account was under review. He tells you not to keep signing in. Repeated attempts, he says, could extend the security lock. At 6:28, the kitchen looks exactly the same. The refrigerator hums. A dish dries on the rack. The oven clock changes by 1 minute. Nothing in the room reflects the scale of the number now sitting on your phone. You ask him to repeat the amount. He does. Then he asks whether a payroll deposit is expected that week. You say yes. He asks about scheduled payments. You mention rent and a household bill. He tells you not to worry. The account is being protected. But you have already done something you cannot take back. You read the code into the phone. You stayed on the call. More importantly, you allowed his explanation to become the frame through which every new fact would be interpreted. Earlier, when the banking app still opened, the balance looked normal. When you mentioned that, he said it was expected. The transfer had not settled. The account looked fine because the money had not moved yet. That detail made the emergency feel more real. If the money were already gone, you would see it. A normal balance no longer counted as evidence that nothing was wrong. Inside his story, it became evidence that the bank still had time to act. During the call, he mentions a recent payment. It is not a large one. It might be a recurring charge or a utility bill. Something that appears to come from your account history. You think he could not know that unless he had access to the account. You do not stop to ask whether the detail proves the call or whether it is simply being fitted into a story that already controls your attention. Around 6:31, your thumb moves toward the end call button. Hang up, you think. Call the number yourself. But the caller is already speaking again. To end the call now, you would have to decide that the number on the screen is lying to you. Staying on the line feels smaller. It feels temporary. Hanging up feels like interrupting the people who might still be able to stop the transfer. The first explanation, the one in which the call is real, gives you instructions. It gives the anxiety somewhere to go. The second explanation, the one in which the call is false, leaves a hole. If he is not the bank, then you do not yet know what is happening. He has not asked for your password. He has not asked for your PIN. He has not asked you to withdraw cash. The absence of those requests feels significant. You have heard stories about fraud, and this does not sound like those stories. It sounds like a bank employee doing a job. He speaks quickly, but not frantically. He sounds like someone explaining the same problem for the 4th time that evening. At 6:34, he says the bank will contact you again after the review. Then the call ends. You remain in the kitchen. For a few minutes, you do not move. Part of you wants to wait for the promised follow-up. The card is still on the counter. Eventually, you pick it up and dial the number printed on it. It is the first independent action you have taken since the text arrived. The voice menu sounds different. There is no security team waiting for you. No voice already knows your case. The system asks for card information the earlier caller never needed, then it places you on hold. The music is ordinary. When a representative answers, she has no temporary reference number for you. She asks you to start from the beginning. She asks whether the earlier caller gave you a case number. He did. You heard it clearly while he was on the line. Now you cannot reproduce it. The number is gone. With it goes the final piece of his script. You explain the text, the call, the code, the logout, and the $8,400 transfer. The representative pauses. Did you call us using the number on your card? She asks. Or did we call you? You say the bank called you. She explains that the bank cannot verify the earlier caller from the number displayed on your screen. Caller ID is not proof of who initiated a call. You tell her the number matched the card exactly. She says she understands. A displayed number can be borrowed. Then she asks you to describe exactly what you did. You walk through the text, the no response, the last 4 digits, the deadline, the code, the app signing out, and the larger transfer. When you reach the code, she asks you to repeat that part. You read the code to him? Yes. There is a silence you will remember for a long time. It is not dramatic. It is the silence of someone who has heard the sequence before and knows what it may mean. She does not say the money is gone. She does not say it is safe. She opens a report and gives you a case number. She says the account may need to be reviewed through official channels. She tells you not to share more codes or information with anyone who contacts you unexpectedly. For future contact, she says, use the bank's official app, website, statement, or the number on the card. You ask whether reading the code caused the transfer. She says she cannot determine that from this call alone. Then she tells you what the account shows. The $18,400 transfer is pending. Pending is not the same as gone. It is also not the same as safe. You write down the case number. Your handwriting becomes smaller near the bottom of the page. You ask about the original $4,800 alert. She says it may have been designed to create the first contact, but she cannot confirm who sent it. It might have been part of the deception. It might also have been a real alert that someone used to build credibility. Either way, the caller has already used it. You hang up. The kitchen is unchanged. The bank card is still on the counter. The app works again, but the transfer remains pending. You check 15 minutes later. Still pending. Before bed, you write the sequence on a piece of paper. Text, call, code, logout, notification. In your handwriting, it looks like a simple list. You have never felt less in control of one. Later, you open the first text again. You read it like a receipt after a purchase, searching for the detail that should have looked wrong. There is no logo, account name, or branding. That does not prove it was false. Real alerts can be plain, but you notice something now. The text was the first object in the chain, and it was the least verified. It created the problem that every later object seemed to confirm. The night produces no new fact. Waiting only begins to feel like another task you are supposed to perform correctly. By morning, the issue is no longer contained inside the phone. You sit at the kitchen table with the bank card, the case number, and your phone face down beside a mug of coffee. Sunlight makes the objects look less dramatic. The card is just a card. The paper is just paper. But the number on the paper connects to the number on the card. The number on the card connects to an account that is now under review. You open the payroll calendar. Your paycheck is scheduled to arrive later that week. Rent is due soon after. A planned payment is waiting in the account history. You do not know which of these will proceed normally. You do not know whether the pending transfer will be stopped. You do not know what the review will decide. The amount has become a timetable. That is why financial fraud creates more than a balance sheet shock. Money is attached to dates, obligations, access, and other people's expectations. A pending transfer changes what you are willing to pay today. A disrupted account turns a routine morning into calls, records, and explanations. Uncertainty makes every ordinary transaction feel like another test. You call the company connected to the scheduled payment. You explain that the account is under review. The person asks when the issue will be resolved. You say you do not know. Neither of you can do anything with that answer. A payment that normally takes seconds now requires an explanation. The explanation satisfies no one, including you. You ask whether the payment can be delayed. You are told it may be, subject to a fee. You ask whether the fee can be waived because of the review. You are told that documentation may be required. You write that down, then wonder what documentation will be enough. Later, the banking app asks you to authenticate again. The account history loads. You find the $18,400 transfer. It is still pending. You scroll farther back, looking for the original $4,800 transfer. It is not there. One alert produced a number. That number produced a call. You still do not know which part was ever real. This is where shame enters. You are the person who checks the number on the card. You are the person who reads security warnings. You have told friends to be careful with suspicious links. That is why the story feels as though it contains a hole, not a hole in the caller's logic. His story fit together. The hole appears in the identity you had built for yourself. You want the loss to have been caused by carelessness, because carelessness feels fixable. But you were trying to prevent a loss. Pressing no was sensible. Comparing the incoming number with the card was sensible under ordinary circumstances. The danger came from treating one genuine-looking signal as independent proof of the entire event. Replay the evening, one object at a time. The text was the warning. Your no was the response. The bank's number appeared on the screen. The caller knew part of the account. The deadline made delay feel dangerous. The code was described as a cancellation. The logout looked like protection. Every object was real enough to examine. Every object had a reasonable explanation. None of them proved that the person speaking was the bank. But inside one urgent story, the objects stopped feeling separate. They became a single answer, and that answer was moving you toward one action. There was a moment when you could have left the call. It came when the code arrived. But by then, checking independently felt like the dangerous choice. Hanging up seemed to risk the case. Reading the code seemed to complete the cancellation. The safe action had been made to look risky. This is what Quiet Ledger calls the authority tunnel. It is not a clinical diagnosis. It is a narrative label for a familiar pressure pattern. Urgency narrows attention. Borrowed institutional signals make one explanation feel official. Each signal is weak by itself. Together, they make the caller's story feel like the only safe path. A displayed number can be falsified. A partial account detail does not prove who is speaking. A security message can be deliberately misinterpreted. An app lock can have more than one explanation. The tunnel is built from borrowed authority and time pressure. It does not require greed. It does not require carelessness. It requires someone to make a reasonable decision with incomplete information while another person controls the clock. This is why intelligence is not a complete defense. Intelligence can help you notice contradictions, but pressure changes what seems contradictory. A logged-out app can mean something is wrong, or inside the caller's story, it can mean the security process is working. A code can be a warning, or it can be presented as the final protective action. The mind does not stop reasoning inside the tunnel. It keeps reasoning quickly and efficiently inside a frame supplied by someone else. The deadline was doing structural work. It turned verification from a right into a dangerous delay. Every question after 6:31 felt as though it was costing seconds instead of gaining information. The number borrowed credibility from the bank. The other signals borrowed credibility from the number. Trust moved in a circle. The circle closed around the one thing you thought you had already verified. The public numbers are worth placing carefully. The Federal Trade Commission reports that consumers reported $12.5 billion in fraud losses in 2024. That was 25% more than the year before. Imposter scams were the most commonly reported fraud category. They accounted for $2.95 billion in reported losses. The FTC's 2024 data book recorded 845,806 imposter scam reports. These are reported figures, not a complete estimate of every incident. They do not mean every imposter scam involved a bank caller. They describe the scale of fraud built around borrowed identities and misplaced trust. The FBI's 20,000 classified Internet Crime Complaint Center report recorded 452,168 complaints involving cyber-enabled fraud, with approximately $17.7 billion in reported losses. That is a broad category, not a total for bank impersonation. The distinction matters. Large numbers can create pressure too. They are useful only when they describe what they actually measure. The Federal Communications Commission warns that caller ID information can be deliberately falsified. A call can be made to appear as though it comes from a trusted or local source. In this story, the number was not imaginary. It was a real bank number displayed in a false context. That difference is the trap. The impersonation did not need to defeat every form of skepticism. It only needed to pass the test you had chosen. You checked the number. Once that test appeared to pass, everything else felt like confirmation. The number did not prove the caller's identity. It made his story feel like an explanation instead of a construction. His final promise was that the bank would contact you after the review. You waited. No one called. That promise was part of the construction too. It gave the conversation an official-sounding ending and gave you permission to hang up. Official guidance is less dramatic. It does not require you to win an argument while someone else controls the clock. It supports ending unexpected contact and independently reaching the company through its official app, website, statement, or card. That changes the source of authority. You stop asking the incoming contact to prove itself. You choose the channel through which the institution can be reached. It does not guarantee a particular outcome. It does not promise reimbursement. It does not remove the need to report what happened or follow the bank's review process. It simply prevents one caller from remaining the only interpreter of the emergency. Back at the table, you turn the bank card over once more. The number is still there. It has not changed. It was never the voice. It never carried the caller's identity inside its digits. It only created the appearance that the identity had already been proven. You return the card to your wallet. Tomorrow, the same number will still be printed in the same black ink. It will still be the real number. By itself, it will still prove nothing about who is speaking. When you remember reading the code, the moment does not return as one isolated mistake. It returns as a sequence of reasonable explanations, accepted by a cautious person who had been given a clock and a number. The clock said, "Hurry." The number said it was safe to trust the hurry. A cautious person can be moved into compliance when several weak signals arrive as one official story. That does not make caution useless. It means caution must examine the structure of the pressure, not only the surface detail that looks authentic. Who created the deadline? Who benefits if you remain inside the call? What independent channel is still available? Those questions do not make the situation comfortable. They make it less narrow. And that is the distinction the evening leaves behind. The number on the screen was real. The mistake was believing the number could tell you who was speaking.